Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 405 of the Orange Pill Investor. I got about 10 things I want to talk about, but I can probably only squeeze in a few. So the title is Don't Do Delta, but Plan Peak Profits, whatever the hell I said. It's up deeply. And so what I mean by that is everybody wants to know what delta to sell. And some people have their favorite delta. They just go straight for the point 3, point 2. I did a spaces with Hermes Lux. He loves the point 1. And those are all fine. But I noticed that there's something that I do. It's just a quick calculation, and I kinda just do it with just kinda eyeballing it, but I used to do the calculations more deliberately, so I'm gonna go throw them out there in case, it's helpful for anybody. Um, the other couple of things that, not gonna really discuss as much, but I can't not talk about it. Let me see if I can find this video that I saw. But while I'm looking for this one, just gonna throw it out there that if you are running a node or thinking about running a node, please consider running knots instead of Bitcoin Core's version. Um, you can check out Bitcoin University's channel, Matthew Kratter. He's been covering it a lot lately. I generally tend to agree with his takes, but I think this one's pretty important. And Jeff Booth likes to say that if Bitcoin will succeed if it remains decentralized and secure. And I think most of the existential threats are probably out of the way, but the fiat system is not going to go down without a fight. And I suspect that the op return limits, the filters, is an attack. Um, there's a couple of really good, well, watch the mechanic video for sure. Let me see in my history if I have the video. I'll just go over the highlights. Okay, here it is. And I'll put this in the chat as well. But this guy describes the situation right now with the nodes. And is this me? Yeah. Let me just put this in the chat. And the main part that I think is worth talking about is describing, he does it better. I'm just going to do this super quick. But he's showing that the nodes are here and they're in between the miners. Get rid of this and this. Oh fuck, I'm not even sharing my screen, am I? What a dumbass. Okay, entire screen, boom. So I wasn't even sharing the audio. I really got to get back into the streaming groove. I've been fucking up lately. All right, so I was the only one jamming to tunes. That was fun. Okay, so the nodes are here. The miners are here. They want the most reward possible for transactions. The holders are here. They want the least fees as possible per transaction. So there's a little bit of a war at all times between people that want to get cheap transaction fees, and the miners who need to make a profit. And we had the block size war back in the day, and the big blockers were trying to hijack Bitcoin. They wanted to increase the block size. They wanted to, um, basically ruin Bitcoin so that the miners could make some more money. And there were some pretty famous people that were on the wrong side of that with a bunch of money backing them. And luckily, they lost. They ended up forking Bitcoin, and I believe it was Bitcoin Cash was the failed fork from that. And there's been others like BSV and a bunch of other failed forks or whatnot. But we dodged that bullet, and the only reason we dodged that bullet is because the volunteers, and I use that word intentionally, and I'll talk about why they're that's important, is the volunteers who are basically, they're the ones that run the code, and they decided to run the real Bitcoin. And if the network had decided to side with the big blocks, Bitcoin could have failed and become captured, and but luckily it did not. And so every person who has a node is volunteering to allow the basically the entire history of Bitcoin on their computer. So they are this is like, making a charitable donation to the human race. And right now we've got people spamming just giant blocks of useless bullshit, um, so that the miners can make more money on these fees. And there's money, money being exchanged and all of that shit. So history is repeating itself, and it's going to be up to the node runners to save the day again, because these are the people, a lot of the people who run nodes. Okay, so back in the day, like if you ran a node, you were probably mining as well. But now everything, there's kind of a little bit of division of labor here. You got people who just hodl Bitcoin. You've got people who just mine. Well, the big miners probably have their own nodes too, um, but everyone can run a node, even if you don't own Bitcoin. Like if you just wanted to help out the network, you could just run a node. Um, However, every holder should probably consider running a node. And the war that's kind of going on right now is right now the nodes, if they run knots, they have the ability to filter out certain transactions, these spam giant like NFTs and whatnot. Um, but the people who want to push a change to Bitcoin Core want to remove that limit. They don't want the node runners to be able to decide for themselves what transactions to filter. Basically, those node runners would no longer have free will to set their own filter limits. And as far as I can tell, this is an attack on Bitcoin. Now, if I want to steel man the case for um, for them to get this through, like the most charitable view that I could have on this is they want to break it so badly, like that it would require consensus to push the fix through. But like that's some 44 double D chess moves that I don't know. I can't really get behind. Um, but yeah, if I really want to just try to explain their position, that's the most charitable way that I can think about it. But what it really looks like is that people are being paid. They're just being bought off, and there's something nefarious going on at Bitcoin Core. So um, I will be learning how to run my own node soon. I will be using knots, and as far as I can tell, the guy that came up with knots in the first place, I think he was trying to get this fix pushed through Bitcoin Core and was snubbed or whatever. And the core people keep saying, "Oh, there's no fix. So since we can't fix it, we'll just we'll just remove the filters completely," which doesn't really make any technical sense, and it also um, seems like you are punishing the volunteers. The volunteers, the people who run the nodes, are the critical part of this whole thing, and you're basically fucking them over. And so I don't know, I can't get them over that. This took me a lot longer to explain than I thought it was going to, but I thought it was important to get that out of the way. Um, the other thing that I think is pretty important is personal security, and I won't talk about this one nearly as long, but if I can find this, I think it's this one. So this is a wire, some former spooks. There's some pretty good like spycraft and interesting things in here. But I believe it was this episode that they talked about some Bitcoin execs getting like abducted, held for ransom, shit like that. It's making me regret putting my face on camera a little bit. And even if you don't have 50,000 followers or whatever, if you are publicly out have publicly outed yourself as a Bitcoiner, when this shit's worth 10 million a coin, like even if you only have half of one, like you're at risk. And if Bitcoin is 10 million a coin, the rest of the world might be suffering some serious inflation uh, woes. And I don't know if a dozen of eggs is worth it costs $25 or something stupid. There might be a lot of desperate folks out there. So um, this is a pretty good channel to follow if you want to survive the fourth turning. So I'll just put that out there. And for God's sakes, obviously you're supposed to have your passphrases securely stashed and all of that good shit. But um, yeah, be prepared to defend yourself from a $5 wrench attack or something even more sophisticated. Because I think some of these abductions were happening in like Europe, but they're pretty sophisticated. Um, Now, most of us don't have, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of Bitcoin like some of these crypto influencers and executives or whatever. But but it's not going to stop desperate people from snatching anything that they can get from anyone that they can nail down. So um, get your plan together. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm getting mine together. All right, let me check a couple of these chats and then I'll talk about what I actually titled the damn video about. What's up, Howard? Only outcome that matters is dollars kept. All other stats, delta catching the bottom, selling the top, is all ego, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Hope you're having a great day. Have you seen Josh's new hedge position? I knew that was going to be the first question. Um, that is some craziness. How do you interpret the spread? Yeah, he basically just made himself delta neutral. Let me see if I can. So let me see if I can find it. There we go. Yeah. So what I'm assuming, it doesn't have dates of when these were put on or off, but my assumption is that, so these are positive, these are negative, right? So my assumption is that he had the 325s on for September, long calls, and he had 77 contracts of the January 325s, right? The Septembers were giving him more gamma exposure, more price action, more delta, and the 325s, um, less theta decay, but less, less price action. And then he went ahead, and I was confused at first too. I was like, "Why did he put on call call credit spreads?" But he didn't. These negative legs were added on after the fact is my assumption, right? I'm assuming that the positive contracts are the longs that he's had on all along, and now he's basically just capped his upside at 330. I would assume temporarily until he gets a better feel for the market. Um, I was trying to interpret the poem a little bit, and I think there was something in there about like a Fed announcement or something, maybe an emergency meeting or something. You know, I've been kind of worrying a little bit about the sell in May and go away thing because Bitcoin is pumped to 100 again, and it's like everybody's like, "Cool, we're about to go to 150." Right? We're about it's about to happen. It's going to go to 200. This is what we've been waiting for. And the market loves to do the opposite of what you want it to do. So I thought, "Oh, fuck, is this just a fake out?" And, the sell in May and go away thing is gonna rear its ugly head, and, Bitcoin's gonna be back in the 80s again, and strategy will be back down in the threes again, like the low threes or whatever. Um, yeah, so I don't believe. Yeah, I don't think that he's thinking, oh, okay, strategy will be under 330 on September 19th, or it'll be under 330 under at on expiration on January 16th. This is basically just him. Um, yeah, he's got a delta neutral position now. So if the price goes up, he's not going to profit from it, and the price goes down, he's really not going to lose anything. So he's just kind of sitting there. Um, it's not exact though, because um, but see, he's already got okay. So he would actually profit if the price does go down to under 330, because this 330 forms the short leg of this spread now. He's got the 330 325 call credit spread now, which I thought was insane because I'm like, why would you do a call credit spread 4 months out, or January is 6 months out? But uh, the point of having them on the same day is now theta is going to be basically identical for both of these positions. Um, so money's draining out of the long calls, but money is draining into the short calls, and they're only $5 wide. So this, I mean, it's almost like closing this position out, right? Like if he had sold 500 of the 325s, then he would have gone to cash. But he sold the 330s, which is just one strike off. So it's practically the same thing as closing this position out. It was a little bit confusing to me at first, and people were like, "I thought you sold," and he's like, "I hedged." That's the same thing. Um, and in all practical purposes, it is. But yeah, if he was going to ride this to expiration, which I don't think is the purpose of it, but if he was, then yes, um, he would be basically making a bet that we are under 330 on September 19th. But basically, I'm guessing that he's just waiting for. I guess people are all worried about this Chanos. I guess he's shorting strategy or something. Um, every time they announce some kind of short like this, they probably come out with some FUD article, and I don't know. They figure out a way to win their little short, and then they scalp some profits, and then they get back out, and then everything goes back to normal. So maybe he's just getting out of the market temporarily is my assumption. Um, I don't know how long he'll leave these on, but yeah, if the whole market shits the bed, which would be kind of funny because Trump's just announced to the world, like, buy stocks because it's going up like a madman. So that would be perfectly, that would be kind of delicious, right? If he announced that the market's about to go up and then it crashes, and then that would force I've been kind of waiting for I thought tariffs was gonna do it, and then we got the tariff pause, but it just seems like the Fed doesn't doesn't do what the market wants it to do until they're forced to do it because 'cause they're just so fucking stupid. So, it really wouldn't surprise me if something did happen to the whole market and S&P 500 dropped 10, 20%, and then they have to have an emergency meeting, and then they lower rates. It's just kinda how that shit seems to go. Um, and so if something like that happened, then, Josh's 325 longs would get wrecked, but all the 330s would print. So he's just fine. His position really wouldn't drop any. He's basically locked in. He's got a $3 million gain on the 325 longs. He's basically locking that in until further notice. Same thing with the 325 longs. He's got $1 million in profit here, and selling this 330 basically locks that in. Um, yeah. If whatever he's worried about happening, I don't know if it's the short or whether it's macroeconomic forces. Whatever he's worried about, my assumption would be that he would go ahead and remove the short positions and then go back to a long position. That's all guessing. I have not had like direct messages with him. This is just me trying to read the tea leaves of his post. Um, yeah. See this part about Powell, delivering a warning and then talking about the Fed makes me think something could break. And if something breaks, then the Fed has to step in and pump the market back up. So if you have shares and you can just hodl, you can just gut it through a crash and wait for the Fed to lower interest rates and pump the market back up, then you can probably ignore this pretty safely, even if this comes true. But you know, for Josh, he's got these leveraged positions. So if the market came crashing down 20%, the Septembers would get fucking annihilated. And I've got a bunch of Septembers myself now that I think about it. The Septembers would get wrecked. The Januaries have time to come back, but if we do get a sell in May and go away situation, I will probably be rolling my Septembers in June, which would be like the perfect worst case scenario for rolling my Septembers if the market's still sucking ass in June. So that's my mind reader's take on that's my prognostication of his prognostication. Keith Gordon, good afternoon. Late steak and eggs today. No, I had bacon and eggs, and it was early, but we tried to watch the finale of damn, I only got 17 minutes before the market closes of The Devil's Plan, the Korean game show. Um, but unfortunately, we didn't realize that the last episode was not the finale, so we have to wait. Kind of annoying. What's up, Deck? What's up, Strategy? Howard, Nithy, what do you say to the concern that Knots is the product of a single developer where Core has had hundreds, if not thousands, of eyes on it? Yeah, I've heard that one as well. And I think that's, not by choice. I think that he's kind of been forced into that position. It would be nice if Bitcoin Core had taken up the cause, but they didn't. And I think it's a little bit of a testament to the decentralization that even just one person can make a difference. And if you look at the number of people running knots, it's been skyrocketing. It's probably still smaller than Core, but yeah, I definitely take your point. And I guess it needs to be said too, though, that even if you run knots, you're still running. It's not a hard fork, and so if some of these spam transactions, you know, still get through because not everyone's running a filter, and if that spam gets through, then it is disseminated to the entire network, and even people running knots still end up having to store the history of that transaction. It's just that the filters are making it difficult for the spammers. They can, if they're determined, they'll still get it through. But it's not like Knots is a hard fork. It could end up, hopefully it won't get to that point, but um, it's still, I guess it's still a consensus mechanism. Like it's not a big enough departure to where the network is having to decide which one to use because it's not so dissimilar from Core that it's a hard fork. Misty added new terms to the fund prospectus. I heard about that. Let's see. The fund may utilize swap contracts. Still got to figure out what the hell that is. May buy deep in the money calls and may buy strategy shares. I believe to try to capture more upside and protect the NAV. They must be copying off my homework because that's exactly what I've been doing. So it might be even harder for me, if the price runs, it's going to be harder for me to out trade them. I still think some of the stuff they do is suboptimal, but all right. So how does spamming work? I saw the other day some JPEG went on chain. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so some companies will actually let you pay a fee to include that spam in a block. So mining companies like Mara, go figure, they're the fucking assholes that were mining Caspa and shit. It's the reason why I no longer trade them. Mara was pretty liquid. The premiums were decent. I used to just trade them. I didn't. I really am agnostic about the mining companies as far as the premiums go. Um, I don't do any research on the miners. If the premium is good, I'll trade it. But I have a no Mara policy because of some of the decisions that they've made. And I believe you can just, if I have this right, you can just pay them a fee because it's so likely that these big mining companies will get a block, soon. They'll just agree. You can just pay them to put it in there, and and then everybody has to have fucking monkey butt NFT or whatever on the blockchain. So, security is the reason I no longer have any Bitcoin in my control. Couldn't move it to save my life. It can't even be moved if everyone agrees. Time locked, geographically dispersed, multi sig is doable. Yeah, that's great information. I'm probably gonna have to do that as well, but it's also one reason why I really didn't mind admitting that I sold half my Bitcoin. It's like, okay, I can just be a small fish. Like, it's like putting that home security sign in your yard. Like, you're like, "Hey, look, I'm not an easy target. Go rob my neighbor," kind of thing. So, um, yeah, it's probably a little bit harder to, um to get money off of the stock platforms in some people's minds. They really want the ability. They think that crypto is untraceable and they can just get away with stuff easier. So I don't know if that's I don't know if my thinking is correct there, but y- if you have a large stash of Bitcoin, you make yourself a key man risk. Um, yeah, I've been working on the geographically distributed part as well, and I intentionally didn't memorize my passphrase just so that if somebody grabs me and tries to torture it out of me, I couldn't give it to them if I wanted to. Um, Now that puts me at risk, like, if the shit hits the fan and I had to duck out of the country and pop up in Argentina or some shit, I wouldn't have my passphrase memorized, and I would have to hope that I could recover the passphrase from those other geographic locations in some way. Um, so there's just trade-offs to everything. I gotta get it figured out, a better way to make me be able to sleep well, but, um, yeah, if anybody was planning to kidnap me and torture the passphrase out of me, I never memorized it, so don't bother. I think Josh is exiting his strategy positions and makes premium on the way down. Yeah, he didn't just sell them. Like, he didn't sell the ones that he bought, he just sold almost identical positions to those so that he could just be completely hedged. He's also referred to the FOMC as the Federal Open Mouth Committee. Nice. With Josh cost basis, he's locking in over 30 million in profits on his 500 contract spread there. Exactly. Yeah, 3 million. What's up, Mars? All right, let me get to what I actually came to talk about. I don't and Lex actually I'm gonna have to quickly go through just to see if there's anything I need to do today, if there's anything I need to close out. So I was getting wrecked on all of these, and now I'm not anymore. I would prefer that they just stay in the money, to be completely honest with you, but they're not. So, I could roll this one, but I really don't need to unless I'm capturing like half of the premium. Um, I think these Septembers were these are probably down 10% today at least. And I only have 10 of them left. No cash. The next time I roll out and collect some premium, I may dollar cost average into these 890s just to give me a little bit of a better chance to turn these into a profitable position. But yeah, it looks like I can just sit and do nothing on these. Tesla, my 310s are still in the money, so nothing really to do here. If I wanted to hedge my positions, I guess I would just sell some I'd sell 10 of the September 1075s or something if I wanted to lock in these profits. Same with the December 530s. If I wanted to pull a Josh, I could sell the 525s or even the 535s. Probably doesn't really matter. Sell like 20 of these. What would happen if I did sell 20 of these? What would that give me? December. if I sold if I sold 20 of the 540s, this is hilarious. I'd be locking in 120 grand of profit without having to actually close the position. Holy shit. You know what's crazy is I could take the 120 grand and I could probably buy what 300 shares of strategy and sell 3 more covered calls against it. This is hurting my head a little bit. Um Wild. I could do all kinds of weird shit. I could buy like $100,000 worth of strike. um yeah, I don't have to make this decision today. I got 5 minutes left on the market. But yeah, so huh. It I'm just thinking about how painful it was to have all those gains in November and then have my account be down 60% from November in like February. It really sucked. And so this would basically just ensure that that doesn't happen without having to take the entire trade off. Well, I'm gonna have to sleep on it. All right, I'm gonna like speed through this. This is the joint account. Plenty of time left on this. I don't see anything major that I need to do here. None of these are still ready to roll. Same here. 36 days to expiration. Okay, so this one's got 1 day left on it. So it doesn't make sense to hold on to this. Let's turn the volume down. So buy it back for 30 cents, 30 bucks, that is. And now I only have 4 covered calls on. And this is just overnight. But it makes sense to I'm just going to roll this down. So my delta or net theta is still negative. So technically still qualifies as an option seller's account. But I'm going to go ahead and try to stay true to the strategy, and I'm going to roll this down to close to the expected move. So let's pick up. You know what? Screw it. Let's go right down to 400. And net theta should be pretty negative now. Or I'm sorry. Okay, my bad. I had that completely backwards. No, I want my net theta to be positive. So it was slightly negative. So I did have to roll this down to something. But it's taking a little bit of a risk. Added 500 bucks. So let's buy one measly share. If I get wrecked on this, if we pump back to 425 or something tomorrow, then I will sell 3 of these to pay for it if I have to. So 570 shares, I'm just inching back Every time I collect premium, just trying to chip away, add a few more shares, add a few more shares, add a few more shares, and hopefully end up with more shares than I started with and at a higher price. All right. Let me just, do I have time to get this done? I don't think there's anything I need to do here. Even these, yeah, there's still some value in all of these, and I have like almost no buying power. So yeah, there's nothing I can do here in the 5K account. All right, cool. So now we can chat some more, and then I'll at the I guess at the very end I'll talk about what I meant to talk about. Yeah, Deeply says he's rolling his position to avoid the tax hit. Yeah, if he actually closed that position, he probably hasn't had them open for a year, so he'd pay long-term capital gains taxes. I don't know how long he's had the Septembers open, but he might be able to like hold on to those and exercise them or something. Well, he can always exercise to avoid the taxes anyway, but he would probably have to sell some to pay for the exercising anyway. Minimum profit 3.4, max 3.7 for Josh's rolled calls on that 500 contract position. Just checked. Crypto guy, I have 2200 strategy. Do you recommend I sell 200 and buy Misty with the money? I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't even legally recommend you do anything. Um, the only reason I hold Misty in that account is for the purposes of the videos, right? I'm making videos, I'm trying to out trade them. So I don't hold MSTY. That's not me giving us like a gold seal stamp of approval on MSTY. I actually am not like completely sold on them. So as soon as the challenge is over in December, I will be unloading all of those positions, all of the MSTY positions for sure, and doing something else with it. You know, the trading is fun for me, but I know some people don't want to bother. They want to generate some income, and they want to be involved in the selling covered calls. They don't want to have to worry about their shares getting called away. They are willing to pay the 1% management fee to outsource it, the responsibility to someone else. I understand all of those reasons, and if I got to the point where I just didn't want to deal with it anymore, um, and I'd like wanted to hodl some strategy shares forever, I'd probably just I would probably figure out how many Misty shares I needed to own in order to generate enough cash to cover all of my expenses because I don't have a job. Um, if I had a job, then I probably just wouldn't own Misty and I would just do my job and make money. Um, but yeah, if I wanted to outsource it, I would figure out how many MSTY shares or IMST shares. They haven't paid a dividend yet, so we don't really have a reasonable expectation there. I'd figure out how many shares I needed to own in order to hopefully be able to pay for my living expenses, and I wouldn't own any more Misty than I absolutely had to. What's up, Danimal? Yeah, I my son was home for one more day, and I kinda let the time I was gonna if everybody was, like, um, down for the night, maybe I would've tried to hop on, but, we were kinda hanging out a bit, and I forgot to set my alarm. So there was a lot of factors going into that, but we had a full house. If you get more than 6 or 7, everybody's doing a lot of nothing, while one person is talking. Um, so I think if I would have tried to jump on, it would have been kind of crowded. So I think it kind of worked out. YOLO in the meta planet. Absolutely. Uh, I need to keep watch. I think I have like $50 in Fidelity or something, but somebody was telling me Fidelity charges you like $50 to trade overseas stocks. So I'll have to hold on, but maybe, yeah, it would be kind of fun to put in a Meta Planet position. especially if they get options. What was the other one? Oh yeah, Semler. Ah, fuck. The market already. Um, Somebody was posting about how Semler's trading at like 1x MNAV or something right now. So I was thinking about just going out as far as I can. Like their options kind of suck. They only go out to like January 2026. There's like no open interest, very low volume. Maybe 50 will be better. No, it's not. Bid ask spread $4 to $5. So yeah, it's it's not the greatest. But I thought, I don't know, pick up one contract or something, but I let time get away from me. It's fine. All right. So, wow, Wolf. Don't do Delta. Plan for peak profits. When I'm deciding what covered call to sell, and let's just go. I'm just going to look at weeklies right now. And really, it's just going to be one day. But if I sell the 400, there's only like $1.30 of upside. So this trade has two pieces to it. It's got the guaranteed profit, which is the $4.83. And that's about, a little over 1% of the capital that you have to put at risk, right? You got to spend $40,000 on 100 shares. So 4.8 is like 1.2% return on capital for one trading day. So it's pretty good. But this is no upside whatsoever. Well, $1.30 really. So from 398.68 up to 400. So $1 is like it's like a third of a percent. So if you add those up, there's like 1.2% guaranteed return plus like another third of a percent. That combination is your total potential profit. Now let's go up to like 410. 410 is $1.90 in guaranteed profit, but that's, 1% of 398 would be like $4. So this is almost like half of that. So this is almost like 0.5% of guaranteed profits in one trading day. But now we've built in some potential profits as well. So the distance between 398 and 410 is $12, which is about 3% of strategy's price. So there's 3% of call away value, meaning if the price goes up from 398 to 410, you get to keep all of that profit. There's 3% of potential profit that you won't get if strategy just stays the same price. So whenever you're selecting a strike, there's two pieces to this. There's the guaranteed profit here, and then there's the potential profit, which is the call away value, which is the distance between the current price and the strike. So here I can guarantee myself like 1.2% profit. Here I can only guarantee myself 0.5%, but the potential profit is about 3%. If you add those up, that's 3.5% potential profit, which makes the 410 a little bit more attractive to me than just taking the 1% guarantee here and foregoing all upside. But at some point, like just selling this gets kind of stupid. Like, why would I sell the 450 and just collect $17? That's like 0.1% would be 0.4. This is like 0.05% return on capital. Like, why would I even put my shares at risk at all for that tiny little profit? What's the delta on this thing? Yeah, like 0.0. 0.199. It's like 0.02 delta here. At some point, there's a ton of like upside, right? So you could make $52 a share here, which would be like 15%. Is that right? Yeah, I don't know, 10, 15% call away value, but like putting those at risk for just a half a percent, like a 0.05% premium doesn't really make any sense to me. But at some point, there would be a sweet spot. And these are the calculations that I'm making when I decide what to sell. So I think this was like 3.5%. So let's go to the 420. The 420, let's see, 1% of this would be, or so 0.1% would be zero point 0.4. So this is like 0.2%. And then $20 is 5%. So this doesn't really make any sense to me. So if I was putting today's trade on, I would probably go here. Like this is a nice balance between premium and adding up the call away value. And it really doesn't matter what expiration, right? If I was going out a week, I'd probably do the same thing. But here, the 410 is still 3% call away, but it's like 2.5% premium here. So adding those two together is like 5.5% potential return. And then the 420 is the 5% call away value from 400 to 420 plus not quite 2% on the premium. So maybe 420 makes more sense going out a full week instead of one day. At some point, I'm going to start getting diminishing returns here. So 430 is like 7%, 10%, or 5% would be 20, right? So yeah, 7.5% call away value and like 1.25% here. So like total potential return at the 430 is 8.5%. So yeah, so when I'm glancing at these, I'm not really opening this up and saying, "Oh yeah, I want to sell the point 0.2 delta." I'm doing just a quick calculation of what's my guaranteed return plus what's my potential return. Add those two together and making sure that I'm comfortable with that balance. I want the premium to be meaningful and I want the call away value to be meaningful as well. But you can still, with options, there's so many different ways to customize this. So let's just say even in a week, I was going to be super bearish but greedy with this premium. This is like 3.5% return in one week. If you sold just out of the money every week and got 3.5%, let's just round it to 3%. That's 150% returns in a year, which is pretty fucking insane. Even though you're foregoing all upside. Like if strategy goes to $1,000 a share, you're throwing all of that away, but you're still you're guaranteed to get 150% in a year. Like TradFi can't wrap their heads around this stuff. However, what if I took the $1,400 and I went out to September? It's greater than 90 days. It's not in my no-go zone. I can buy almost 2 of the 1080s. And let's just take a look and see what happens with the graph, right? So with the graph, if the price goes over The break even is 414, but if I buy one, oh, it just shortened the graph. So now, let me see if I can hit it. Oh, this is because I don't own 100 shares in this account. That's annoying. Um, yeah, this graph is all jacked up. My bad. Let's add a long call. Let's assume that this was a poor man's covered call. So I'm going to go out to June, just so we can make the graph look nicer. I'm going to make this super deep in the money, like the 100 strike. All right, so this looks a little better. So you can see that if the price goes over the 400 strike, it just levels off the profits. And so now if I take that 1400 bucks and I buy one of the 1080s, I should get a lot more green out here now. Yeah. So, now it's like, okay, I've limited my upside with the short call, but if something hits before September, then, I can make a bunch of money. Like even if the price went to trying to hit 500 a share, you can make a little bit of money here. But let's say the price stays at 400. Now I can get two of the 1080s and the graph gets even more vertical. Or if I bought two today and I get lucky and the price stays low and I can buy, four more, then you end up with a situation like what I have here, right? Every time I was collecting premiums, I'm just stacking these speculative, lottery tickets and accumulating as many as I possibly can. So even being super aggressive with the short strikes, and I'm not recommending you sell the at the money covered calls and forego all of the upside in strategy. I'm just saying, even if you chose to do that, it to a certain extent also depends on what you do with the money. If you take the money and spend it, okay, now you have no upside. But if you take the money and you start stacking longer calls, then you can make the graph look like this instead of like this. And at these low IV environments, even though strategy is back up to what, 25% off all-time highs, it seems like long calls are expensive. But with IV being low, there's two parts of a long call's price. There's the implied vol side, which is Vega, and then there's, the actual price of the underlying itself. So when an implied vol and the price is up, that's like really, really high call prices. But right now, IV is low, share price is high. If you think IV is going to go up in the future, and if you still think the price is going to go up in the future, then, you could argue that even buying these 1080s at 850 is reasonable, even though it's almost 2.5 times what I paid for them, right? These are in profit. So if you want to take profits, I would be looking to sell these. But if you're looking into the future and thinking that the price will be higher and that IV will be higher, then you'd be buying these. So you can, depending on your bias, you can tell yourself anything you want to convince yourself to take any action. um, so just try to be emotionless and cold and calculating when you're trying to figure this out, because you'll tell yourself any story that you want to hear in order to convince yourself that you should go long or go or take profits. Not my real name. 2,000 shares can make 16K a week selling 35 Delta. That sounds about right. Harjo Singh, what's your strategy target this year? This is just for fun because I'm not qualified to do fair valuations, or I don't have a model to do a price target, but I think it's pretty reasonable that if the bull market is not over, and if Bitcoin goes up 50% to 150, then strategy probably goes up double that to like 800. And if Bitcoin hits 200K, then 175, 200K, I guess strategies at 1,000. In March, strategy did about a 4x from the bottom, from about 500 a share to 2,000 in short order. And then in November, it did something similar. Post split numbers, it went from 125 to like 500. So a nice 4x from our most recent bottom would be kind of cool. We bottomed out around 240, 250. So 4x that gets us to 1,000. So the next time we can get a nice, right, Bitcoin went from 50 to 100. So if it can go from 75 to 150 and send strategy to, I don't know, 800 to 1,000 a share, that would be kind of cool. But, do we need the market to crash before the Fed steps in and has an emergency meeting to lower the rates? I don't know. So, Bitcoin could see 80 again before it sees 150. I just have no idea. We know it will get to 150 and 200 and 500 and a million and 10 million and all that stuff. It's just a matter of how long we have to wait for it to happen. But strategies, probably needs to add some more leverage to really get that 2x move. Right now, it's probably trading at like 1.25 to 1.5 leverage to Bitcoin's moves. It's not really commanding much of a leverage play right now. So they need to hammer the ATM on the preferreds, maybe add some convertible bonds to get their leverage ratio up. That would help command a nice rip if Bitcoin runs. Until then, the IV is probably just going to stay low. IV is low because no one wants to pay a lot of money for the calls. And they probably don't want to pay a lot of money for the calls because the leverage ratio is too low. It's not really justifying treating strategy as a super levered Bitcoin play at the moment. I'd like to get two more rallies before the bull market is over, but I don't know if we'll get one now and another one at the end of 2025, early 2026, or if this is just, are we getting rejected? Sorry, not Bitcoin, not strategy, Bitcoin. is Bitcoin getting rejected and we're not going to see all-time highs, and then we're going to be back down here again. Um, we can't get that price discovery until we meaningfully surpass 106. Like 100K has to become the floor. The prophecy didn't come absolutely the way that we wanted it, but I think he said when 84 becomes the base or something like that. So right now we've got support for 76. Um, you could say we have support for 84 as well. And all of this is kind of 84-ish. And this is kind of 84-ish. So there's, you know, is 84 the base? Like even if we do crash, it seems like 76 to 84 seems pretty strong. If it doesn't hold, oh god. If 76 doesn't hold, there's nothing but air down to frickin' 60. That would suck. But all that shit's on the table. I have no idea. And that's kind of the point of being an option seller, is just admitting that you have no idea and trying to capture some theta in the short term while being long theta in the long term. That's my plan. All right. We're all caught up on the chats. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Be good, y'all.